be productive students. Our scores are reflective of that. Our children are only learning about 20% of the time with other things like testing and doing transgender research and underwater basket weaving and many other mandated programs that we have from the federal government. And we cannot stand for it any longer. Thank you.
It is federal overreach. The Lee County School District has worked very effectively with a few students whose families have asked for support. The school district practice is to respect the privacy of all students, and I don't believe that anybody should be telling us how to do our job if we're doing it effectively and supporting all students in the school district.
I just don't see the federal overreach. I don't see how that could be the direction of enforcing at a local level. I think here's, what I do like is that the conversation has come up. We're able to take a better position on this, have a dialogue about it, but this is absolutely federal overreach, and we need to have a much deeper dialogue on this as a community before we allow any of our own decisions on this, let alone a federal decision on this.
I will get the last question right. Well, those of you all who are in the Cape, you know me. See, there's a great middle road to take right here, Pastor. Fortunately, that's not me. And looking at the legislation, and looking at the wording, the verbiage, it's very clear if the question talks about transgender identity. So right there are three parts. There's transgender for those of us who are baby boomers that knew Bruce, now Caitlin, now having to talk about a part that's a transgender. Then there's a person who's transitioning, but then there's identity. So the policy itself talks about a significant directive that's not binding. So I have a problem with the identity portion of it, but I have to be very transparent. The transgender, which is totally separate, because I too am a father of a 13-year-old daughter and would have a problem with a 16-year-old who identifies but's not transitioning or transgender. So I hope you followed that. If not, I want to be very specific about my position. Thank you.
I'd like to move a little bit differently this time in the response to provide everybody the opportunity to have the first response to a question. So the next question goes more towards sensitivity to the economics, back to the sensitivity of the economics of our district. We have a need for new schools and in certain areas of our district, and that costs money. The question is, do you support a tax increase to raise revenue for Lee County schools? And we'll start with Mrs. Quackenbush. Oh, I'm sorry, see the paddles. Paddles first. Yes, the question is, do you support a tax increase to raise revenue for Lee County schools? Mrs. Quackenbush first. And then we'll proceed right, and then start with Mr. Dunbar.
I believe $1.3 billion we are now spending is plenty. And from the programs that I have seen in the schools and the vast amount of waste almost everywhere you look in the school system, that we can do a much better job of handling our money so that we do not need to increase taxes. This last incursion into building in Bonita is a perfect example of tremendous overspending. When the Lee County property appraiser evaluates a piece of land less than $1 million, and yet we're willing to pay $11 million, and this self-same piece of property happens to have had a huge asbestos dump on top of it with very little abatement evidence on it. We need to start doing more research as board members and making certain that each and every decision is made from a taxpayer point of view and that we are spending the money wisely for our schools and for our children.
We are just now reaching the same level of operational expense per pupil that we were at in 2007. We have lost $600 million in capital funding since 2008. The state and the county have changed the funding paradigm for the Lee County School District. Consequently, we no longer have the revenues that we used to have. And we're going to have to figure out what it is we're going to do if we're going to continue to provide the same quality education, an equitable education for all students. And that means we've got to find an additional revenue stream. I don't know whether it's a sales tax, whether it's a millage increase. That's a conversation the board hasn't had. But I think this community needs to understand that the state legislator and the county commission have given you a tax rebate on the back of the school district.
We're already about $450 million in debt based on the practices of using certificates of participation, almost like a credit card. The Bonita School would have cost us not only $72 million to purchase the land and build, but another $30 million in interest. So that would have been a total of $100 million on top of the $450 million that we're already in debt. So we are at a crisis. What I don't think that the present board has done effectively is educate the public as to how dire the situation is. And absolutely, can we have better efficiencies if we had an external auditor come in and look at where else we could save? Yes, but we're $450 million in debt. We have to figure out a way to get out of that because we're not looking at the books properly to be able to make that decision. And taxing or another solution needs to be raised to see how else we can get out of that $450 million in debt.
Okay, here we go, part 2. Public entities are required to publish their budgets. When you get home, I strongly encourage you, for those who haven't done it, to look at the budget. If you look towards the end and look at what has happened with the millage rate over the past 12 years, notice how it continues to go down. Notice how that which we have, the local required efforts is what they call it, and that which is expended for capital overlay has been cut by 0.5. And then notice how the property value goes up, and here's one, and then the rollback rate has been cut. So the number of students have continued to increase. So the amount of revenue has decreased, and the number of students have continued to increase. I said, yes, I would support it, but not until we have a very transparent process that everybody knows what's going on with the budget and it's right there posted, because either we're 1.3 billion in debt because people are just completely irresponsible, or there's something more to the story. And I submit to you, having gone page by page through the budget, that there's more to the story than just some kind of superfluous, we're just doing something egregious. I challenge you for that, and please they better have that conversation.
That's not on that. Mr. Dunbar first.
Another figure, $513 million. That's our debt right now. We're going to add another 70 million to it, 700 million. That translates into about $50 million in interest. We have to do something. We cut the budget a little bit, but you know how many years even we cut 10 million out of the budget? You know how many years it would take to pay that off? Interest still goes on, and we're going to go on using that credit card. All of you had a credit card, got that first one, you were so happy. The second happiest day was when you paid it off. We're going to have to use our credit card now. There's one less painless way, there's no painless way, and that's a half-cent sales tax. That'll generate $70 million the first year. Those of us are here year-round, it would be less painless to us because 35% of that 70 million would come from our snow angels, that they're here with us. So we have to do something, and we have to do something quickly. We can't keep escalating that deficit. Thank you.
Well, first I said no, absolutely not. I will not support the half-cent sales tax. I said it when I was on the board, and I still stand by it, but let's get a few things real straight. First, if the half-cent sales tax passed next year, it doesn't go to pay off any existing debt. That doesn't happen by Florida statute. Don't fool yourselves. We're still in debt. Doesn't matter. But what a lot of people don't know is within the next 3 to 5 years, our debts, 40% of our debt's paid off. Facts are all out there. You guys just go look them up and you can see it for yourself. You want to know what we can do about it? That's simple. We own a lot of land. We need to start selling some land off. We transport kids everywhere. We need to start shrinking some of the school zones and be more responsible. Let's face it, folks, if you give the government more money, they'll spend all the money.
Well, the fact of the matter is that Lee Schools is in such a deep hole of debt that cost-cutting alone is not going to dig us out of the debt. It's like the credit card bill, where if you pay the minimum, you're going to be paying it until you're 120 years old. I don't find it to be fiscally responsible that last year we paid over $50 million in debt service alone. I don't find it fiscally responsible that we are running the buses where we do. My platform is to cut back on that and save money, but did you know that our buses are so old that we spend over $6 million a year just repairing the buses? So are there a lot of things we can do to cut costs? Absolutely, but we need, I'm going to say it, the T word, tax, a sustainable stream to get us out of the debt as we need to build more schools. And I support the half-cent sales tax.
Okay, we have several questions from the audience regarding sex education. So this is not a yes or no question, it's a broad question. Do we need more sex education, less? What kind of standards and values? Let's start with Mr. Armstrong.
Do we need more? As a parent, no. I don't believe we need more. I'm a firm believer, you know, that's my job as a parent. It's my responsibility. The parents need to be responsible for their own kids. And if they're not, then we need to reach out to these parents and help them and give them the tools so they can be more responsible. Because some of these parents, they're kids themselves. So, you know, we can help them out, and I think that's the right thing to do. But I also believe that it's my job as a parent and to be responsible for my kids and not to intrude on your tax dollars to educate my kids when I'm supposed to be doing that anyways. Thank you.
That's Mr. Dunbar, then you can bring the mic back this way.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong mentioned that he was the only one with children in the system. I'm old, but that means that I have 15 grandchildren and grandchildren, 10 of them in the system right now. Now, when we talk about parents, putting the responsibility on the parents, I call them every day, and they say to me, mostly single parents, mother said, please don't call me again, Mr. Dunbar. I'm going to get fired if you call again. Do whatever you have to do. So it falls back on the teachers. We have to do what we have to do. Try to educate them. Try to be the parent. It's not there. I work at this every day. I work hard at it. I'm at ALC. This is their last chance. The last chance that they have. The next step is out the door. I make a difference. Teachers make a difference. We are the ones responsible. And that responsibility has been put heavily upon the teacher. We need good teachers. Good teachers will supplement those parents. Thank you so much.
We need the microphone this way. Thank you.
I spoke at a board meeting, probably almost a year ago, and it was after the Lee County School District had the foresight to adopt the supplementary material to the 9th grade health book, and that supplementary material covers birth control and STDs. I give the Lee County School District kudos for that. Also, I recommended at the time that this program, we need age-appropriate sex education in the elementary schools, age-appropriate, and especially, I'm seeing frowns, and especially in the middle school. Parents, if we're going to be a world-class school system, if we're going to be a society that is not a provincial society, we can't put our heads down in the sand. We need to recognize that the kids are sexually mature and acting out in sometimes elementary, often in middle.
I believe that our children have been over-sexualized by sex education in schools. And I do not think it's their right or responsibility to do so. It's enough to do the 3 R's. We've got to focus on giving them the tools to survive in the world and let the parents do their rightful job. Here's an example of books that are being read in our schools. The Bluest Eye contains graphic detail of rape and incest, according to the Collier County Public Schools. And this was recommended there and is also in this district. Beloved, a novel depicts scenes of bestiality, gang rape, and infant's gruesome murder, according to the Collier County, of course. And so I can go on and on. There was a list of about 30 sexually explicit books that they were asked to read in Collier and Lee counties and across the state. This is part of the National Sex Ed program, and it needs to end. We need to bring morality back so that we don't have incidents in our school like last Friday. We need to make sure that our children know rights and rights.
We have an obligation to teach our children facts, and the facts need to be age appropriate. We don't have an obligation to teach our children values. That comes from the home. But we do have a responsibility to help them become critical thinkers. So we give them the information, they make the decisions about what's important based on the family values that they come to school with. I have no problem with the sex ed textbooks that were approved for the middle school. I thought they were age appropriate and they were factual and content.
I don't believe we need more, and as was stated a little earlier, we need to help the parents. The world is changing so dramatically and so quickly that it's hard for parents and grandparents that are supporting some of their grandchildren and the parents of their grandchildren. We need to help those parents and grandparents better articulate, better share the information with their children and grandchildren. There's multiple ways to do that. There's ways to get more programs out to parents and grandparents, and definitely to the demographics of Latino and Haitian parents. There's other ways in language that could also be provided. So I think we need to focus and refocus on how we can support parents and grandparents.
If I understood the question correctly, it asked, do we need more? Do we need more curriculum? In order to answer that, then you need to know exactly what's being taught. As a former biology teacher, I can tell you that we do cover that when we talk about development and inheritance, also as sexual reproduction. Also, many of my friends are coaches. They cover STDs, and they talk about birth control. Also, there's a program for the nurses out there in which we get it age appropriate, starting pretty much in secondary school, middle, on up to high school. However, that was the middle road. I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this, but it's one of my little secrets. I did not give my wife first kiss to like our 8th date, and I was like 28. That was back in 1995. Folks, the world is changing. The problem is not with the text and the curriculum in the schools. It's with that cell phone and that computer that gets to the YouTube and all those issues on TV. Our parents need help. So that's where the crux of the matter is. The crux does not lie here. And parents, I know because I have one. So we're going to have to find a way to work together to really get at this and to really make a difference and stop beating up the schools, because, trust me, the schools don't really want to get that far into it anyway. But that's where the problem is, and you ask any teacher or principal and they will tell you that.
Thank you. Thank you. And same rules apply. Paddle first, and we're going to start with the response with Mr. Minaya. Thank you. Now, I'm the son of an immigrant. My father came here from Europe after World War II, and we talk about values and principles and what makes us distinctly American. The melting pot has gotten so much larger since I was a kid, and so much more diverse, so that when we talk about values coming from the home, the diversity of home is so much different. So the challenge of an educator and a school district is that much more complicated. Now, but what makes us American is the Constitution, and understanding what we collectively have. Do you currently feel that we adequately teach the Constitution in our schools so that kids can comprehend and be one America? Do we adequately teach the Constitution in our schools today? Thank you. And then we're going to proceed left. Actually, we'll come over to Mr. Donald and then Mrs. Morgan in that direction.
Perfect. My goodness, when I was a political science major in college, Washington and Jefferson College, and so I read a lot of our books. And then when I did my citizenship test, and the courses that I had to take around my citizenship test, it was wonderful to learn again and learn more, right? So I don't think we can ever teach enough on the Constitution. There's lessons every day, every week, every month. And so I think the important part is, how do we make it come to life for our students, right? It's not this old document. How do we take the situation that happened recently locally and apply that to the Constitution? I think we need to do a better job as a community and as a district to take such important things like the Constitution and bring them to life, not only for our students, but for all of us, right? Prepping for this, I learned even more that I had forgotten and how it applied in today's times.
We'll go Mr. Dahl, and then we'll go to Ms. Morgan.
To understand this question, just ask like my sister-in-law who teaches United States history and American government in the school system. So the teachers get so excited about this unit because oftentimes it happens after FSA, after that high 6 testing. So they get to really get into it. So again, I love the fact that how do you define enough? I can say that they're exposed to it, the Bill of Rights they know, they have to recite the preamble, sometimes they have competitions about it, and they really get gung-ho about being patriotic and nationalistic. Again, that's been my exposure. I encourage you to get into the schools, sit down with some of those U.S. history teachers and Constitution teachers and see for yourself. But again, that's kind of subjective. Everybody has their own interpretation of what you've been afforded to see. But I can tell you, and I invite you out to James Stevens International Academy. And Ms. Tommy Bones would love to have you out there so you can see it in action.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan.
I think we need to be teaching about the Constitution starting in kindergarten. There are always lessons to be learned at every grade level. I don't think it's necessary to have, and I don't think just having one class at one point in time is enough to really embed the ideas in students. And I think the other problem is that some teachers are passionate about it and feel comfortable teaching it, and others are not, and therefore don't. So I think it's really a matter of, it's like a soft skill. It's something that you learn starting in kindergarten, and your knowledge grows as someone, I think Dr. Manaya said, you face current situations and make constitutional judgments. And that's really how you learn, and that's really how it becomes part of your soul.
Well, in this very room, many of you also attended a class by Chris Ann Hall. I wear this pin proudly about studying the Constitution with Chris Ann Hall. And she has a website I heartily endorse for everybody to go to. There's also a book called The Story Killers, and it was put out showing us how they are not teaching the Constitution in our schools anymore under social studies. They are teaching it under English, and they have a precept called cold reading, where you look at a document with no context. So they don't know anything about the Constitution, they read the Constitution, and then they use a precept called range. Range means that you take an old document like the Constitution and you compare it with something written in the last 2 or 3 years, such as by Linda R. Monk, who said that we the people didn't really mean we the people, that our founding fathers were male chauvinist pigs and we shouldn't listen to them, and the Constitution is a living, breathing document and should be changed. Now, this is not what I call studying the Constitution.
Thank you.
So much to say and so little time. First of all, I do believe that teachers do a good job of teaching the Constitution There are certain courses and certain grade levels where it's studied more closely. However, I think that there are all kinds of programs at school where we celebrate being Americans and being the exceptional country that we are. That said, I noticed in the question that the term melting pot was used. Melting pot is actually an antiquated term. The term that I've heard, and I think works much better for America, especially if we're open-minded Americans, is the term salad bowl. In other words, in a salad, you are all together and you're all Americans, but you retain your cultural identity. And I think we need to celebrate identity of especially the more recent immigrants and also the African Americans.
As Ms. Quackenbush did, I was here as well for Chris Ann Hall. I wore my pin very proudly. Now, as far as teaching our kids the Constitution, yeah, I've gone to these classes. Do they talk about it a little bit? Yes. Very little. They spend more time talking about how to prepare for a test, more time talking about some of the standards, Common Core standards, little about the Constitution. One of the things think we need to go back and start teaching them at a younger age, but there's one more piece of this that I really want to bring out right now. I also think it should be mandatory that once a year, every board member should at least have 2 hours of constitutional training, because they are a constitutional officer. Thank you.
My question, come to my classroom. Bible's on the left side, the Constitution on the right side. There are people sitting right here that have come to my classroom and they have seen that. No, we don't teach it. I go to the classes, we don't teach it. Students say to me, you were in the Army. Did you kill anybody? That's the only thing there. No, I didn't kill anybody. And I didn't get killed. They say, well, it's obvious. But really, Constitution is not there. They change it so often in Congress and the President. It's hard to keep up with it myself. But when a question's asked about the Constitution, I can show them in the Bible. Our forefathers were smart enough, intelligent enough to use the Bible as a basis. All men are created equal. Those are my words, and I'll always live by that. Thank you.
Let me ask a broad question. This is not a yes or no question, but please try to keep your answer concise. If you had to identify your top priority as a school board member for this district, what would be this priority? Let's start with Ms. Vaughn.
I think that hiring and retaining highly effective teachers. I think that, do you want me to explain? I guess.
Within the constraints of time, yes.
I got it, okay. I believe that the teachers do not get the respect that they deserve. The teachers in this district need to have more input into their own professional development. They need to have more input into school-based decision-making. The recent contract, the teachers did not, the veteran seasoned teachers did not get any kind of a raise. I think that we need to have highly effective principals in our schools because they are the ones that make or break whether a teacher is going to stay or leave, and they establish the school culture. And we're in throughout the country, but especially in Florida and especially here, we're in dire straits.
Yeah. Go either way. We need to keep it moving.
My top priority is clear, and I've announced it over and over again. Common sense, not Common Core, in our schools. We need to worry about what our kids are learning every day and stop teaching them the kinds of things we've heard about today. We need to trust the teachers, and I agree on that, and not use these tests in order to grade the teachers. The VAM scores are the Gordian knot that ties it all together so that the children are not able to learn and the teachers are not able to teach. If we could end the VAM scores in our schools today, we would have thousands of teachers who would apply to our schools because we are trusting them to teach and use their craft.
I think in 2010, the board lost its footing as a governing entity. And I think it's struggled since that time to find a culture, a set of protocols that would inspire public confidence in its decision-making. We now have a superintendent that I think is perfectly capable of doing the most important job we have in the district, which is to help students learn, improve student achievement, and close the learning gap. And it's really not our job as a board to tell them how to do it. It's our job to set the goal and evaluate the superintendent, but we have not been particularly effective in doing that. So the thing that I am most concerned about, and the reason I am running, one of the reasons I'm running, is because I think we need to come back to best practices for a board working as a team with the superintendent.
The Cape Coral Charter School system is doing well. The graduation rates are 96%. Lee County School District, it is 74%. So that means 26% of our students are either dropping out or not completing. When you drill down a little more, from a Latino perspective, 30% are not graduating or not completing. From an African American perspective, it's 39% that aren't graduating or not completing. That's unacceptable. If we're going to have a we're below Charlotte and we're below Collier in terms of our ranking. Across the country, we're ranked 4,500 out of about 10,500 school districts. So graduation rates, looking at peeling back the onion, finding out why our students are completing, and creating programs that haven't been created before to solve for this issue. Thank you.
I absolutely love this question. My experience as a former school-based principal administrator, as a former district administrator, and as a teacher now, I can tell you without hesitation, the number one issue facing us is the retention of teachers. I don't know if you've ever seen, have you ever seen when the little kids, those of you all with grandkids, and see, I'm looking out at the generations now, or smaller kids, how they really love to go to school? Do you see their faces when they go to school? And have you ever suffered if a child ever left? The teacher is the change agent and can really turn the lights on for a child. And we've got to retain our teachers, because once we retain the teachers, the recruitment is going to follow. We've got to stop this old, because it is definitely, we have to start the year and finish the year fully staffed with highly effective teachers. And I mean that is the number one goal. And we're going to put policies in place in order to make that happen so that can happen for our district. And that is my response.
Mr. Armstrong, Mr. Dunbar, either one.
Could you do me a favor and please read that question again?
Yes, the question was if you had to identify your top priority as a school board member for this district, what would be that priority?
Thank you. Well, there's a loaded question. Identify my top priority. Well, it's not my ideas.